Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and yesterday Apple released macOS Sonoma 14.6. I put out a video yesterday that was dedicated to just supported Macs and testing on that with all the new features and security updates. But in this video, I'm going to split it up and only focus in on OpenCore Legacy Patcher for unsupported Macs. I've got 10 different Mac models that we are going to test out to try to cover all the different desktops and laptop models that we can. And we're going to go over each different model and each different configuration in those testing scenarios. And we're going to make sure OpenCore Legacy Patcher 1.5.0 and Sonoma 14.6 install on these Mac models. You're going to want to stick around for this one. Let's jump in and get started. I do my best to cover every single detail of the Sonoma and the OpenCore Legacy Patcher 1.5.0 update process. If you need to go to a certain section for a certain Mac model, I have a detailed chapter section that you can jump exactly to the timestamp that you want to in the video to go over your testing scenario, or just watch the entire video if you want to get a good overview picture of what's going on here in the update. I have added more Mac models to the testing fleet because, again, I want to make sure that we're trying to test all of the different scenarios and different patching situations that we can. So before installing any macOS update, I always want to make sure that I'm running the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher before I do so. The way to do that is you just go to OpenCore Legacy Patcher page, go directly to the GitHub, and you can see when the latest release is 1.5.0. Not every release has an associated OpenCore Legacy Patcher update to it. As long as everything's running fine and Apple didn't make any major changes to break the patcher can continue to function on its current version. And then the developers can continue working on the release for macOS Sequoia coming in the fall. And that's where we want all the work to be doing. We don't want them having to fix like Ventura, Monterey, or Sonoma right now. So what we want to do here is test 1.5.0 against 14.6 to make sure everything's running properly before you update. You do not have to update immediately. You can wait a week or a couple days to make sure that you don't see any problems come up on Twitter or in Reddit or on the Discord for OpenCore Legacy Patcher to be able to get a good sense of what's going on. But that's why I do the testing against the 10 devices here, to give you a good picture of what's going on. I can't test every single machine, every single application version, but we do our best to try to do as much testing as possible before you do your update on your personal Mac. So now that we see that 1.5.0 is the latest version, now let's go into the 14.6 update. Now the reason why I talk about the 14.6 update is because a lot of people wonder, well, wait a minute, do I even need to install this update? Is there anything important in this update for me to even go through the entire process of updating my unsupported Mac? Now that's what I want to try to put in my article, and I talk about in my supported video. I talk about what the features and security updates are inside 14.6 before you want to make that big jump. For the feature updates, I always put a list of those in kind of a summary here of what's going on in the update. So if we go all the way down to the bottom, we got a bunch of enterprise fixes, and we have one Sonoma feature, which basically adds multi-monitor support for the 14-inch MacBook Pro with chip. Obviously, that is not going to help anybody that's unsupported because that's just Apple Silicon M3. So there's no new features that Apple has included in the 14.6 update. But the big point here is the security content. A record 46 security vulnerabilities are patched, and 8 Safari and WebKit security update fixes. Part of the point of installing a update and running a newer version on your unsupported Mac is the fact that you're getting these patches from Apple. Some features like SIP or System Integrity Protection are disabled, certain parts of SIP, but keep in mind, if you're running High Sierra, you don't get any of these fixes to the core OS only, and you're vulnerable to any of those exploits. And actually, most threat actors are looking for vulnerable systems out there that are unpatched. Yes, there is some features of security that are disabled, but you could make the argument that it is more secure in certain areas because Apple is applying these latest fixes to the core operating system. Now that we know that, and it's a record security update number, then we can start to think, well, maybe this is more of an important update to apply to our unsupported Mac. I recommend it, and I am going to install it on my Macs and obviously all my test fleet Macs. So now that we know some of that, let's jump into some of the test machines and going through the update process. Okay, in this next section, we're going to show you how to update the OpenCore Legacy Patcher app. We're going to show you how to update the OpenCore bootloader on your EFI partition and show you how to install the latest version of root patches for your graphics acceleration, legacy, or modern wireless. We have two different types of viewers. We have a lot of advanced users that watch this are looking for the testing information, and you guys, that's totally fine if you want to skip to the next section for the testing information. But we also have a lot of new users that are still a little bit confused about the updating process of the app and the updating of the OpenCore and the root patches. And we also have users that are a little confused about the update process and how do I do this? Do I do the update first or the OpenCore first? My recommendation is to make sure that you're on the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher first, because the latest application usually has any kind of changes that are the latest fixes for previous problems that maybe Apple caused with the patcher in the changes in the operating system. That's not to say that some of the newer versions have problems with your hardware configuration model, but that's what we're trying to test here today to make sure we don't catch anything. Now, keep in mind what updating here first does. Before we install a software update, we make sure that there's no problems with this version on the operating system version that you're on before you install the latest version of 14.6 on your Mac. So let's say you install the latest app, you install the root patches and the OpenCore, and then you're having a problem. Well, now you don't have to wonder, well, was it the patcher or the update? We know that, wait a minute, there's probably something wrong here with my configuration in OpenCore first, or the root patches. And you can concentrate on that first before you even have to worry about bringing in the operating system update into it. But everything works okay here, then you can install 14.6 and then check to make sure that works. And as long as it boots up fine, you're good on that part. And then you can apply the patches again after, because remember, a software update wipes out all those patches and they have to be reapplied after the software update. And as long as that's okay, you're good to go. So yes, it is an involved process, but that's why we took some time in the beginning of this video to walk over whether it's important to you to install this update before you even go ahead and go through all this process. Let's go over how to make sure that you're on the latest version. Now, you'll get this pop-up and you can do this two different ways. You can do it the old-fashioned way and view it on GitHub and download it manually and update it. But remember, that has changed in 1.5.0. If you have not watched my video there, I walk you through the brand new installation process. Or you can just click download and install and it does it all automatically for you. If you go to the OpenCore Legacy Patcher page, remember I always say in the videos, always go to the Dortania site and then go to the GitHub link just in case, because sometimes there's websites out there. Dortania is the only official site to go to. Don't go to any of those other sites, always go to the main site. And again, veteran users know this, but I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. You can go to the release pages here and then scroll down under the assets section. This is the new uninstaller and the new installer packages. You can still download the app this way, the old app, but that's the legacy version of installing the latest update now. If you're installing new, you want to use the package. And if you want to uninstall it, you can use the uninstaller. And again, I go over that in my 1.5 video. You want to go back there and take a look at that. I go over that over there. But today, we're just going to go through this system here and let it automatically install. So let's watch this live here. So we'll click download install. It's going to prepare and it's going to start downloading that package right here. And it's going to unpack and install it automatically. And then you're going to be on the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher application. That's what I always call a step 1. Make sure that the application is updated first. Step 2 is the OpenCore EFI bootloader. Step 3 is our root patches. So let this finish here. Give it a second. I'm just going to extract the update. We'll use our administrator password to install the app. And that is complete. Now it needs to make some additional changes. Now remember, this only happens one time on the initial upgrade to 1.5.0. So you will only see that this first time. And there we go. Update successful. OpenCore Legacy Patcher has been updated to latest version 1.5.0. Would you like to update OpenCore and your root patches? And this is great because it automatically walks you through this process. You don't have to click here first, let it go, and then go back to the main menu and click here. This will automatically bring you through this part first to install OpenCore EFI to your partition to update it. Right now, this machine's on OpenCore 99. It's going to update it to OpenCore 100, and then we're going to install the latest version of the root patches. So we're going to click on yes. So it's going to go through, and it writes all this configuration to a temporary location. Then we're going to install it to our EFI partition disk. It's going to check the local disks, and it's going to see that we have disk 0. We only have one hard drive on here. If you had a USB drive, sometimes it'll show up in here, but usually disk 0 is your internal drive. Click on that, and then we're going to load it onto our EFI partition. It's going to mount it, install. There it is. It's going to install it, and then we are done. Now it's saying that it's completed with the OpenCore update, and now we are going to update our root patches for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, graphics acceleration, all that. Click on yes, and now it gives you a list of the patches that it's actually going to install. AMD Terascale 2 for this early 2011 17-inch MacBook Pro, graphics for Intel Sandy Bridge, and legacy keyboard backlight. And you can see the last time we patched this system was way back on April 2nd, 2024. So let's start that root process right now. Now keep in mind, if your Mac requires a kernel debug kit, this is where this would come in right here. It would pop up and say that, hey, you need to download the kernel debug kit for your model. I put that list in the description of this video because only certain models need those drivers from that kernel debug kit. And if yours doesn't, you will not see this here. It'll roll through this and it'll install and then patch your system. So now it's rebuilding the kernel cache. We'll give it a second here, and then we will reboot our system, and then we will be on 1.5.0 application, 100 OpenCore EFI, and the latest version of the root patches for our graphics. There we go. Root patcher is complete. Let's reboot and restart. Okay, we're loading back in, and there we are on 1.5.0 on the latest version, and we can go into the OpenCore app and we can make sure that everything is a-okay. We can go to applications, and we can also put a shortcut in our quick dock down here. If we want to click on this and drag it, doesn't work down here when you have an alias. You can put it on the other side of the last launched apps, on the same side as the recycle bin, and now you got your shortcut down here. So once you open it up, you can actually bring the application from your previous opening area to your regular dock, and that's how you can have OpenCore in here. Now that it's open, we can actually check to make sure that the OpenCore is updated to the latest version. We can click on settings, and then we can go into the app, and then we can scroll down, and we should see that we are on OpenCore release 100. There we go. So the OpenCore is installed properly at 1.5.0. We can return, and we can also check out root patches by clicking in root patches again, and we can see that all the applicable patches are already installed on July 30th today, 1.5.0. So we're good to go. And all we need to do now is install a software update, and then it'll go through that whole process, and when it comes back up, you go through this process one more time to reapply the post-root patches, and then you're good to go on your update. If you want me to, in the future, go through that whole process to do the update live, I can do that, but we got a lot of testing results to go to, so let me know in the comments. And let me know in the comments what you think so far of the format. Am I missing anything? What Mac are you going to be updating to 14.6, or are you going to hold off for a little bit? I'd like to know what you plan to do when a software update like Sonoma 14.6 comes out. Let me know in the comments. Okay, now let's jump into the testing machines to see how well the 14.6 update installed with 1.5.0. Our first machine, we're going to go newest to oldest, is a 15-inch 2017 MacBook Pro with Touch Bar and Touch ID. So this is a really important machine to test because in the past there has been issues with Touch ID and the Touch Bar. There's also some changes around the Kernel Debug Kit, and that's why I like to capture the latest version, because in our last video, I talked about how we have to wait around 6 hours before Apple posts the latest Kernel Debug Kit for you to be able to download and install. So what happens is if you try to update your OpenCore within that 6 hours and the Kernel Debug Kit is not available for the latest version, you're actually getting the old version, and you need the latest version to match, or at least pretty close to match. Usually what the developers have said is that one version up or down is usually okay, but we've seen issues in the past where that's not the case. So I always like to make sure that the latest version is out before I install, if my Mac needs the Kernel Debug Kit. So how can we tell if the version of the Kernel Debug Kit is out yet? The good thing is that the developers keep a very nice GitHub to be able to keep track of that. Let's take a look at that now. The site is on the same Dotania site. It is called KDK Support PKG on GitHub, and you can see that link here, and I'll put that in the patch notes or in the description of this video. You can see that there's already a kernel debug kit for the 15.1 Sequoia build that includes support for Apple Intelligence. So we can scroll down here. Here's 15.0, 15.0, and now the 14.6. These are beta builds, and you can see by the longer version and the letter at the end like that. And here's the production build, 23G80. That's what matches our build version over here, 23G80, and that's the one we want. When you see that posted and it matches, you are ready to go to be able to install the latest version. Now, if your Mac doesn't need a KDK or the kernel debug kit, you don't really have to worry about that because you're not going to be downloading that. So we can see the patches for 1.5.0 for this machine, AMD Legacy GCN 2017, modern wireless, and the T1 security chip. So when we test Touch ID, I want to make sure that we click on lock screen, and we can use the Touch ID here. There we go, Touch ID works, and I can also see the touch bar is working properly. This installation went great, no problems whatsoever. 2017 MacBook Pro, good to go. Next up in the testing fleet is a new entry, our 12-inch Retina MacBook, early 2016. This thing has a 1.1 gigahertz M3 processor, so it's a little bit slower, and that's why I thought it was an interesting entry to be able to bring into the fold to see how it does, even though it's a lot faster than some of the older Intel Macs that we're testing today. We are on 1.5.0, and we have Intel Skylake, modern wireless, and PCIe FaceTime camera, and these patches installed great. There is no kernel debug kit on this particular model, and everything installed great with no issues whatsoever on this machine. Next up on our list is another new entry, and this is a machine that I've been trying to find to add to the collection because I've been seeing a lot of issues with iMacs from 2012 to 2015, and this is our 27-inch late 2015 5K Retina iMac. And this is a really nice machine, and it's a powerful machine. i7 core processor, 16 gigs of RAM. I don't see why there's any reason why this machine can't run Sonoma natively, and it runs extremely well. Very fast, no issues whatsoever. On the patch side, we've got AMD Legacy GCN, Intel Skylake, modern wireless, and we did need the kernel debug kit for 23G80 installed just fine, no issues whatsoever. This machine's running like a dream. Next up is our Retina 15-inch mid-2014 MacBook Pro. We picked this one because it is a Nvidia Kepler-based machine, and Intel has well. This has had some issues in the past, but this time around, no issues whatsoever on this installation. We've got modern wireless, PCIe FaceTime camera, and we also picked it because it does not need the kernel debug kit. But we do see system extensions upgraded messages when we install the patches. And again, this is why I try to pick these devices and models that do these specific things. So if you see this, OpenCore Legacy Patcher does have these warnings that usually come out to say, if you see this message, don't worry about it. But this is why I want to show you these messages for these particular machines, that these are normal and you should expect to see them. But again, running okay with no issues whatsoever. Next up is one of my favorite machines, good old trusty late 2013 trash can Mac Pro. This thing has been a workhorse for me, and it has also got problems too. One of the graphics card boards is failing, so it only works with one side of the memory, so it's running 16 gigs of RAM, but it can't even run dual channel because one side's totally not working or being detected. Sometimes it restarts when we are doing the install, and it did on this time. During the install of the 14.6 update, it completely went blank. I had to unplug it, let it cool down a little bit, and then I was able to power it back on. So it's kind of running a little bit difficult, but that's why I wanted to continue testing on it too, because if you're having issues like this, it can still work and the patch is still functioning properly. It is also my main caching server for all my software updates, and you can see that with these stats that I can show you here in the screenshot. This is just an example of one of my original screenshots. I can't find the one that I took yesterday, but I actually served 86.5 gigabytes from the caching server. So basically what happens is that when one of the machines needs a software update, it reaches out to Apple, says it needs it, but it also talks to the caching server, and the caching server will download that update, and then once it has it, it can serve it to all the clients that receive that same update at over 125 to 30 megabytes a second. So it can download a 13.5 gigabyte Sonoma 14.6 update in under 2 minutes. It's just fantastic. This thing's been a great workhorse. We are running AMD Legacy GCN graphics, modern wireless, and I couldn't find the screenshot for the latest KDK, but it does need a KDK for that AMD graphics. And this system is, even though it's having issues, still running on 14.6 with 1.5.0 with no issues. Next up is our little Mac Mini, late 2012. It's got an i5 processor with 4 gigabytes of RAM. It's still a good little computer that can still run macOS Sonoma pretty well. We are running 14.6 on 1.5.0, and for graphics we need our Ivy Bridge, Intel, and our modern wireless. This machine does not require the KDK, and it is another reason why I picked this particular model, but we will, again, just like the Kepler machine, see the system extensions updated here, and that is totally normal for Intel HD 4000 graphics. But other than that, no issues whatsoever on this Mac Mini. Next up is another new entry for the test fleet is our 27-inch mid-2011 iMac. This is running an i7 processor with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and we also have an SSD installed, and that's why I have SSD fan control running, because if you don't have that sensor on there from the regular hard drive, the fan will go on the hard disk fan. So this stays at about 2000 RPM and stays quiet. We're running 150, 14.6. For our graphics, we've got AMD Terascale 2 and our Intel Sandy Bridge, plus our legacy wireless. And we got our KDK that downloaded and installed this machine. Even though it is a 2011, it's still running very well with its processor and memory. It doesn't see any slowdowns. It's running very well and still a great Mac. Next up is our 17-inch late 2011 MacBook Pro. I love this thing. It is a complete beast. I call it the Fat Book Pro, and we are running with graphics AMD Terascale 2, Intel Sandy Bridge, modern wireless, and legacy keyboard backlight. These machines also have bad GPUs. Almost all of them had a bad GPU. This particular Mac still has a good running GPU, which is pretty dang rare. I try to take care of it so it doesn't fail, but eventually one day it most likely will fail, which is kind of sad. We did need the Kernel Debug Kit here, 23G80, and we are having no issues whatsoever, even though this machine has had issues in the past with the patcher where it had login window crashing, but I've not seen that in the previous 2 updates, so it's really good. Everything seems to be a-okay with this 17-inch MacBook Pro. Okay, we're getting near the end here. We got our cheese grater, mid-2010 Mac Pro, 14.6, 150, Nvidia Kepler. On this machine we are running an upgraded metal compatible Nvidia card NVS 510 2GB, which is a really inexpensive budget card that doesn't really perform very well, but it at least gives basic metal compatibility. Now, we also have an upgraded Wi-Fi and Bluetooth card, the BCM943, and this machine, and I'll have to get some more information about this card because a lot of you have been asking about this card. What is it and where can I get one? And this card's working very well, and that's what gives us the modern wireless drivers that we can use. Or we would have been using legacy wireless here, but since we have an upgraded card, we have the modern wireless drivers. Legacy USB 1.1. Keep in mind, we still have to use our USB 2.0 hub or older 2008 Apple-based keyboard with a 2.0 hub in it to be able to install the patches and use macOS recovery. And that's with all 2010 and lower devices, keeping that in mind for new users. But other than that, this machine is still running very well, now being 14 years old. I love this Mac Pro. Let's save the best for last. Our mid-2010 13-inch polycarbonate white MacBook. This machine is running a 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 Duo with 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, this is basically one of the slower, or the slowest machine in the fleet. And I gotta be honest, it does struggle a little bit. And that's why I usually do not really recommend Sonoma on 2009 and under devices, unless maybe an iMac or Mac Pro. Those machines can still do very well. But once you get back to those Core 2 Duos, they do struggle, especially with a spinning hard drive. This has an SSD, and that's why it's able to still function at a pretty good rate. But it is a little bit slow in certain areas. I have to be perfectly honest. This machine is running Nvidia Tesla with modern wireless and a legacy USB 1.1, and it also needs that USB 2.0 hub or a 2008 Apple keyboard with the hub in it to be able to install the patches and get into recovery. I did not grab a screenshot in here to pull that KDK, but if you want to be able to check the Kernel Debug Kit, you can go into Library, Developer, KDKs, and you can see the KDK 14.6 was cached in here and installed on July 29th when I started doing my testing. So that's working just fine. Now, I wanted to go somewhere. This machine is running okay, no issues whatsoever. But I wanted to talk about two other items. If you install the update for 14.6 or any software update, and some of the slower machines will come to a black window, and they're slow where when the graphics are not accelerated properly, it'll be a black screen and it's extremely hard to log in, or you can't really type in the password. Here's a picture of what the desktop will look like when it's there, but the screen will be all black and you're trying to type in the password. When that's happening, you can wait a little bit, and a lot of times you'll be able to type in your password, but it's okay to power down and power back up, because then normally you're able to log in and at least get the auto pop-up for the patches to be able to install. But if you see a system with this background like this, you are not accelerated and something is wrong. If your pop-up for automatic root patches does not come up, just go into the hard drive, go into the applications folder, and then fire up OpenCore Legacy Patcher and install those root patches. Sometimes after an install, if the system does not have the Wi-Fi drivers required, the first step is to be able to install the wireless drivers first as just a step one. Then it'll reboot. Then it'll still be like this, and you're like, well, why didn't the root patches installed? It needs to be able to reach out for the Kernel Debug Kit to get wireless first. Then once it's able to get that Kernel Debug Kit, it can install it, then apply the drivers and the graphics acceleration patches, then reboot, and then this screen will be gone and you'll be fully accelerated. So I wanted to just go over that because I've seen a couple of people get tripped up on that part. But that's how that system goes. So that's it for OpenCore Legacy Patcher 1.5.0 and Sonoma 14.6. Tell me what you think about this format. Do you like the videos split up? Do you want them all in one so you can just watch everything? Or do you like me to concentrate on supported Macs and unsupported Macs? Is there something that I'm missing with my testing? Is there something else that you want me to go over? Please let me know in the comments. I love to read over them and also read over how your patching experience went. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.